Hello, and welcome to a Loverboy 821 video. This video is a little bit different, as usually we just play games, but, yeah, as you guys may or may not know, Heroes of Might and Magic 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. As a matter of fact, the first time I played Heroes of Might and Magic 3, I was 4 years old, and I still am playing as recently as I was playing yesterday. So I'm very into this game, and I recently got two of my friends into this game, and I was like, oh, okay, how do I teach people from scratch, enough that they can have fun while also playing with me, because I have tens of thousands of hours in this game. I am, to say, pretty fucking good. There are very few games that I'm legitimately good at, and this is one of them. Now, out of curiosity, because I have been getting more into the Heroes of Might and Magic community, because I didn't really realize how active the community was still going until like a couple years ago. And the first thing I noticed is that a lot of people don't play the same parameters that I play. A lot of them go like, oh, you can't use these secondary skills, or these spells are overpowered, or whatever. Whereas I'm just like, anything goes. My favorite part of the game is that there are so many broken strategies that no strategy would be the meta. And also, I play on like big maps that take like days of gameplay to like actually get through. Whereas, like, small and medium maps seem to be, like, more of the norm, I guess. That is to say that people are, like, they play at a much faster, like, I'm gonna rush and kick someone's ass real quick kind of methodology. Sorry about that. Yeah. Anyway, so out of curiosity, I was like, I was looking up a tier list of heroes just to see what everyone's thoughts are. I have my own thoughts on what the heroes are. But I was led to this. Let's view the community rank real quick, if my internet can keep it together. And this is the tier list I was shown. Let's pause that. Anyway, their tier list has these guys in S tier, and these guys in A tier, and these B tier, C tier, D tier, and F tier. And may I be completely frank with this ranking, this is the community ranking, which, as I understand it, is like each of the heroes are placed based on where they're placed on everyone in the community who's done this, and I don't imagine it's obviously everyone in the community. But everyone who's done this is like, okay, this person is S on this guy's list and B on this guy's list, so if they were only going based on those two lists, that makes them A tier, is my understanding of how this works. And if I may be completely frank with you, this tier list might be the worst tier list I've ever seen in my life. Let me go through a couple of problems I have with it, and then I'll get to the point of this video, which is I'm going to make my own tier list. But what was I looking at? The sheer audacity to have Sandro in C tier is insane. He's like one of, if not the best necromancer. There's like maybe two people I would put above him in necromancy. Fucking Tazar is in C tier. This man is an absolute unit. Salamir is somehow an S tier. Okay. I have a real problem with Drakon and Gelu being an F tier. This is the main character of the Armageddon's Blade expansion. The wielder of Armageddon's Blade. His ability is exclusive to him, and it allows him to turn tier 2 and 3 units into tier 4 units. And not just any tier 4 units, tier 4 shooters who are, like, the best tier 4 shooters in the game. And Dracon can turn tier 4s and 5s into tier 6s, which I cannot overstate how powerful that is, let alone enchanters themselves being incredibly useful. She should absolutely not be in D tier. Mephala, absolutely should. She is, without exaggeration, the best Rampart hero. Period. Maybe. Yeah, and, like, I like Catherine as much as the next guy, but her fucking... Yeah, anyway, we're gonna create our own rankings. And this will be the official Loverboy tier list of all of the heroes, and Heroes of Might and Magic 3, including the fan-made expansion, Horn of the Abyss, because I, like many other people, I assume, consider it just to be the 4th expansion of the game. And I will declare that this is before the Factory Town comes out, that I've been looking forward to for the last 3 years, because I thought it was coming out at the end of 2019. It is currently 2022, as I record this. But I'm still very hopeful that it is coming out. If I had money, really, I would absolutely contribute to this project, but I am a broke boy. Anyway, let's start the tier list, shall we? First person on the tier list is Adelaide, and her specialty is Frost Ring, which allows her to use the spell Frost Ring to do additional damage. Now, a couple things I want to keep in mind when I'm tiering each of these characters, and this tier list is going to take a while, because as you can see, there are a few characters I need to go through, and I want to give reasoning for each one. But, if I can be clear, she specializes in Frost Ring. Frost Ring is not a very good spell. It's cold damage, which relies on water magic, which is already, in my opinion, the worst school of magic to be based off of, and also it does surround damage but misses the center, so you can usually hit like 2 or 3 stacks with it, which is good, but it just doesn't do enough damage to be worth it, and its mana cost is exceptionally high. Additionally, a thing to keep in mind for any magic-using hero, magic hero in the Castle faction, is that they only get Mage's Guild up to level 4, which isn't a huge detriment, because most of the best spells are, level 3 and 4, but it's still worth considering. I really just kind of see her as like a middle-of-the-road hero. Like, it's a specialty that doesn't help her that much, but like it also has situational uses, and like also she's from the Castle faction, which means if you pick her as your main hero, you are the Castle faction, and that's already just a huge buff to be from the Castle faction. I should clarify that this is from the perspective that you are picking these heroes as your first like starting hero for a map. Because certain heroes have abilities that make them ideal as a second choice rather than a first choice. Anyway, we also have Adela, the cleric, and her specialty is Bless. She is easily an A tier. First of all, she starts with Diplomacy, which, as most everyone knows, is already fucking broken, because it allows you to hire a stupid amount of troops from the game map. But also, Bless is actually a really good first level spell, and she automatically starts with it. It allows her units to do maximum damage and on every hit. So like if a Titan does 40 to 60 damage, it lets the Titan always do 60 damage, which is pretty coked. Not a lot else to say about her. She's just really stupidly good. Now, I don't remember the name of this hero, I will admit, but I do know her specialty is fire magic, which is she starts the game with expert level fire magic, which is exceptional for 2 reasons. One, you don't start expert level anything when you spawn in, and 2, she's the only person from the Fortress faction who can learn the skill fire magic, because there's a whole deal about it. She's one of the campaign characters, and it's like, I come from a land of earth and water, but I know fire magic. So she is pretty good. I would say she's a B tier. Because a couple things to keep in mind is starting with expert fire magic, even though I don't think fire magic is the 2 best schools of magic are earth and air, and they're so much better than fire and water that is crazy, okay? But starting with expert level fire magic, and also lets you do so much damage based on the early game, and she does get a lot of spell power, so that she's still useful late game. And also, she can, to my knowledge, she can still learn the other schools of magic, so it's just a more complete magical character for the Fortress Town. Additionally, the Fortress Town, not bad. It has some really solid monsters, but it does only have up to 3rd level mages guilds, so I could see an argument for her being C tier, but I think just like the immediate power she starts with when you start a map with her makes her B tier. Next we have this man's. His name is Aenain. Aenain, and he's an elementalist, and he's from the Conflux Castle. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but his specialty is Disrupting Ray, which is completely worthless. There's no reason to use that spell at all. I'm gonna honestly put him in F tier. He's I'm gonna put him in D tier. The reason I'm putting him in D tier is because he's a magic-based hero in the Conflux Castle, which gets both the Magic University and the up to 5th level Mages Guild. Which means, just by circumstances of if you're picking him and starting with the Conflux Castle, you can get the most utility out of him possible, but he's not worth picking over other magical-based heroes in the Conflux Castle. We also have Eris from the Rampart Castle, and his specialty is the Pegasi. Pegasi are very, very fast 4th tier units that hit pretty hard. But they're also incredibly fragile. So I feel like specializing in the 4th tier unit is just a solid thing anyway, because it's low enough that you're getting bonuses like prevalently enough that you actually notice them at earlier levels. But they're also strong enough that it's like you don't need too many levels to make them good. For example, like someone who specializes in 1st level units, yeah, every time they level up, those units get 5% of their attack and 5% of their defense, but if their attack is 2 and their defense is 3, then they need 10 levels to go up 1 attack. That's not really the case with the Pegasi. I feel comfortable putting him in C tier. He's a magic-based hero, which is already good. Now, Ayn is a wizard from the Tower faction. You can probably tell that because she looks like a goddamn genie. Her specialty is you get plus 350 gold a day. I'm going to put her in B class, and I feel like that's pretty high, and the reason she's not in C tier is almost circumstantially of being a wizard, which is kind of like a big deal to me, because it's not just about which heroes are best on their own, but which heroes make the most of, like, their available resources based on what town they're in. But the Tower has some pretty expensive units, including their Titans, which are 5,000 gold, which are equal to the Archangels. So the extra gold is useful. Gold is always useful in heroes in Might and Magic. I for one am always running out of gold at the higher levels, trying to buy all of my troops. I feel like as far as second heroes go, like if you weren't starting the campaign with her, she would be an A tier for a secondary hero, like the hero that you keep in your castle to bring your troops to you. Because the plus 350 gold, very nice. Also, she's a magic-based hero in the Wizard Tower. They get the most access to spells and various knowledge things. So she's able to, make use of all of that. And she's not a terribly complicated character for why I put her in B class. But moving on, and I am actually double-checking the names of all of these people is why it takes a second. We have Aislinn, the Necromancer. She specializes in Meteor Swarm. First of all, the Necropolis it's hard to argue the Necropolis isn't the strongest castle for long games. And I usually play long games, so for a while they seemed super overpowered to me, but after having played, more medium or shorter games, I've realized that it's more of a weak in the early game, strong in the late game sort of deal. With the Necromancy ability, she's able to build a big enough army to stand as meat shields as she destroys people with powerful spells. Meteor Swarm is actually a very powerful spell. And having it immediately is good for destroying units who you might have trouble with. Having it late game is good just as a catch-all, I want to do damage to this group of people. Its damage is high enough to actually matter, and she, with her specialization plus her spell power, she can utilize it pretty good, and I feel like this is another solid B-tier hero. This is Adjet. He's an overlord. His specialty is Beholders. Beholders are pretty good units. But honestly, he's an F-tier hero, in my opinion. Because, well, Beholders aren't good enough to, warrant wasting your specialization on them, and that's basically the gist of it. He's also not a magic hero, which, the dungeon town has some of the most powerful magic abilities. It's basically the three most powerful magic towns are the tower, the conflux, and then the dungeon. And if you're being the dungeon, you probably want to be a magic hero, and if you aren't being the dungeon, you want to be someone who specializes in something much cooler, like the Minotaurs, I would assume. Trying to double check who he is. What the hell? He's not popping up. I could have swore he was from the fortress town. Or is he from the Rampart? Oh, he's from the Rampart town. I'm sorry, Alagar. Alagar the Druid specializes in Ice Bolt. We're going to give him a C tier. Ice Bolt's a pretty good spell, especially early game. Specializing in it makes him more powerful. However, again, it necessitates water magic as one of your skills. And, it's just overall not game-changing, in my opinion. And then we have Alamar. He specializes in Resurrection. We're going to give him an A tier. Resurrection is insane. He's also from the dungeon town and utilizes his powerful magic abilities. And with Resurrection, he's able to keep his meat shields alive. Not much else to say about that. We have Alkin. He specializes in Gorgons. He's going to get an A tier ranking as well, actually. Because, first of all, Gorgons are the strongest tier 5 in the game. Just flat out. With their death stare ability, they are just monstrous. They're incredibly tanky. So they're continuously able to give out there. And though they have lackluster damage compared to other tier 5s, with their death stare ability, they're more than capable of killing things over the course of long-term battle, which is good because they're the tankiest tier 5s. Anything that powers them up is a good thing. Additionally, Fortress is a town that favors might heroes because they, first of all, they only go up to level 3 Mages Guild, which is rough. And also, this isn't really factoring in, but I like that he is, just look how cute he is. He's very fuzzy. And this is the first fan-made expansion character. Her name is Annabelle. She specializes in pirates, and she's going to get a B-class rating. I'm feeling like I should probably start going faster because 21 minutes, and I'm not anywhere close to done, so I'll try to be faster now. Anyway, she specializes in pirates. Pirates are probably overpowered as far as tier 3s go. And the new Cove Town is very flexible. We have another member of the Cove Town. His specialty is 1 crystal a day. We're going to put him in D tier because 1 crystal a day is kind of... You know what? We're actually putting him in F tier. I'd put him in D tier if I was keeping into account that you could grab him as a second hero and use him just for resources, but using him as your main hero over other heroes in the Cove Town, you're crazy. Like, you have to be an absolutely crazy person. This is a member of the Fortress Town. His specialty is intelligence. Having extra mana is a really good thing, especially when you're not going to have access to a lot of those really powerful spells, and the main thing you're going to want to do is try and find a way to grab Dimension Door and Town Portal, and you want to be able to use as much mana as possible to go through. This is Arlok. He's an overlord, which means he's from the Dungeon Town. He specializes in Ballista. I feel like he's probably a D tier. As much as I love Ballistas. Alright, and I love, like, the heroes and heroes in Might Magic 5 who specialize in Ballista. The Heroes 3 Ballistas are not worth specializing in. They are not powerful enough to make a difference at higher levels of play. I understand that they're pretty good early game, but who cares? Everything can be good early game. We have Ashe, the Heretic. She's from the Inferno Castle, and we're going to give her also... Ooh, actually... We're going to give her a C tier. She specializes in the spell Bloodlust, which I feel like can be a powerful boon, especially to her fast but not particularly strong units in the Inferno Castle. This is Astral. I want to give Astral an A tier, but I have to give Astral a C tier. And honestly, you can probably make the argument that he belongs in D tier. He certainly is saved from F tier just based on being a wizard in the Tower faction, but his specialty is Hypnotize. Hypnotize is basically worthless. I love the spell, but it has no effect on units that have any amount of actual units / hit points. And you need to be such a high level, even with his specialization, to overcome even, like, you know, like, for example, for final fights, a stack of 10 tier 7s isn't even a lot. And I don't see a situation in which he ever really overcomes being able to take over 10 tier 7s. Which means his... Oh, I talked myself into saying he's D... No. Yeah, he's D tier. I really like Astral, but he's not good. This is Astra. She specializes in Cure, which is it heals a stack and also gets rid of various debuffs on them. And since she specializes in it, which she starts with it, And also she's from the Cove Town, and I don't have a lot to say about this hero. She's solid. She can be C or B tier. I want to put her in C tier just because that's how I feel about her. But I feel like if someone put her in B tier, I wouldn't be as mad about it as I was about certain rankings at the beginning of this. Who am I looking for right now? Who are you, my man? I feel like you're from the Fortress Town, right? Are you not from the Fortress Town? Oh, you're from the Inferno Town, and your specialty is intelligence. Yeah, that'll easily put you in C tier. Yes, and her specialty is navigation. Navigation is a terrible specialty. I'm putting her in F tier. This is another special character. His specialty is Sea Dogs, which lets him upgrade the already quite powerful pirates into Sea Dogs, which are the third form of pirates, without having a town to let him do that. So honestly, just for how quickly you can get out Sea Dogs, which are, I believe, the strongest tier 3, I'll put him in B tier. I believe his specialty is ogres. He's another one of the special ones, and ogres are tier 4, so they're pretty good, but they're not. And I would probably say they're one of the worst tier 4s. And I know a lot of people are like, no, they're the best tier 4s, and those people are insane. But still, tier 4s are tier 4s, and he's also a might hero in the barbarian faction. So pretty much he goes in C tier are pretty much the ones that are like, we utilize what we have available to us, but they're not being held back by their specialties, and they're not going crazy at their specialties. We haven't run into any of like the utterly insane characters yet, I don't think. But speaking of really insane characters, we have another A tier in Brissa, her specialty being Haste. Haste being a crazy good spell. It also gives her air magic to start with, which is also fantastic. And also she is an elementalist in the Conflicts Castle. Which means her haste she's also going to be hasting her phoenixes, because phoenixes are so incredibly fast, and that's her tier 7. It also gives her a chance to cast haste before most anyone else gets to go, so she gets the most advantage out of her specialty. I kind of want to say she's top of A tier right now. I could almost put her in S tier. Here's a fun one. Specializes in wyverns. We're gonna put them in B tier. I don't need to, we also have a specializes in basilisks. He can go into C tier. He could probably go into B tier. Yeah, he can go into B tier. There's Caitlyn, and as far as secondary heroes go, she would be an A tier. As a starting hero, I can't give her more than C tier. Her specialty is she gets plus 350 gold, which is more valuable than, I believe this is the other man that does that I put into a low category. No, he's Disrupting Ray. You? Nope, you're Beholders. What the fuck? What the? You know what? Whatever. I don't have a lot of good justification for this, honestly. She's just a very solid hero whose specialty definitely helps set her apart. This hero's specialty is Gogs. Gogs are the only shooter of the Inferno Castle. They are also possibly the worst shooter in the game. Also, he's in the Inferno Castle, which, well, I don't think it's as bad as everyone says it is. Everyone's like, it's the unviable faction. I don't think that. It definitely doesn't help him when he's lackluster enough to focus in the worst thing. Also, we have Khaled, whose specialty is +1 sulfur. We already talked about my opinion on such things. It's not worth it. And then we have Kazmetra, and she specializes in Sea Witches. Sea Witches are honestly really good tier 5 shooters. I'm not actually like differentiating them that clearly like on this scale, but I feel like for whatever reason she deserves to be higher up here in C tier. We also have Cassiopeia, who specializes in nymphs. Nymphs are somehow even worse pixies. I have to put her in D tier. I feel like specializing in a tier 1 unit is just, you know, solid. Especially when they are very fast, teleport, and don't take retaliation attacks. But just the frailty and lack of actual damage make it... I wouldn't say it's holding her back as much as I would say it's the Cove Town has some really, really solid heroes, and it's not worth taking her over them. So, like, I could see she could be fairly in C tier, or even maybe B tier, if you want to be super generous. But she's absolutely in D tier just by being in the Cove Town and having to compete against some of the others. Now we have the actual main character of the Heroes 3 in Might and Magic. Her name is Catherine. She's the queen. She specializes in the best tier 4 in the game, which are the swordsmen / crusaders, and her stats are pretty solid. However, pretty much anyone specializing in a unit is not going to get higher than B tier. Like, it's better to specialize in a skill, or have some other spell, or some other big gain. Specializing in a unit is incredibly restrictive. So even though Catherine is probably the best hero who specializes in a unit, I can only give her B tier. We have Charna, the Death Knight. She's going to get a D tier. Her specialty is whites. We have my beloved. His name is Christian. He is a knight. He specializes in the ballista. I've already explained why specializing in the ballista isn't actually worth it. I love him. He is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, hero, lore-wise. And I just like his look, but he's not good. We have CL, and her specialty is Magic Arrow, which I'm going to go ahead and give her a C tier just because she's A, part of the Conflux, which is magic-oriented, so she's already utilizing the best of her. Like, she's already utilizing the things that her talent gives her. But also, Magic Arrow is just so good early game because she powers it up with her specialty, and it's so cheap you can use it over and over again. Which means you can basically use your hero to smash through tons of early game fights and advance quicker than your opponents. That being said, even powered up as she does, the Magic Arrow is not useful in endgame encounters. Which is why I don't think she belongs higher than C tier. We have Clancy. He specializes in unicorns. I'll go ahead and give him D tier. We have Clavis, the Death Knight. He gives plus 350 gold a turn. I'll honestly give him C tier, which... yeah. I'll give him C tier. We have Corks. Captain Corks. He specializes in offense and is from the motherfucking Cove Town. He is a high A tier. he is a solid A tier. Cronius specializes in Slayer, very good for high-level opponents, but not necessarily cost-effective versus other spells you can use. C tier. We have Craghack, who also specializes in offense like Captain Corks. However, unlike Captain Corks, he is going to be our first S tier. The reason being is simply his stat differential, and also, like, his town benefits more from the aggressive rushdown style, as opposed to the Cove. It has a slightly different play, and the difference is negligible, I'll be honest with you. Like, I don't know that Craghack is that much better than Corks, that they deserve to be tiers apart. But honestly, I can't give Corks S tier, but I can easily give Craghack S tier, and I'm not 100% sure on my reasoning there. Here's another easy one. God, I got so... His name is Cuthbert. He's a cleric. He specializes in the weakness spell. The weakness spell is dog shit. However, it's just useful enough that I can't say it's completely worthless, and therefore he is saved from F tier. We have Syra. She's a wizard. She specializes in haste and also starts with a diplomacy skill. She's going to go to S tier. She's going to be our second S tier. She's a wizard from the Tower faction, which means she gets the most access to spells. She specializes in haste, which is a fantastic spell from early level to end game. She starts with diplomacy, which is entirely broken. And unlike Adelaide, who that's her main thing, is starting with diplomacy, her starting with air magic as her other... Yeah, she's just a really good magic caster from the best magic casting faction, who also has diplomacy. She doesn't start with air magic, she starts with wisdom and diplomacy, which are two of the most important possible abilities. I'm sorry, I misspoke about her starting with air magic. She does not start with our air magic. However, she is very susceptible to getting it since she specializes in an air magic spell. We have the man who specializes in Minotaurs, and Minotaurs are a really good unit to specialize in. I don't think I have to go into detail why, but I will. They're level 5 units, incredibly powerful for level 5 units. And they walk that line of low enough level to actually get enough bonuses to matter from their hero, and also good enough that they don't necessarily need those bonuses to be useful, and therefore it's not like an imposition to keep them in your army at all times. He goes in B tier, which I've already explained is the highest tier that anyone specializing in a monster can possibly get. Here we have another name, but I'm not... I believe her name is Daramith, but I might be mispronouncing that. Anyway, she specializes in the spell Fortune, which is a good spell, but not game-breaking. And so, again, as just a wizard in the tower who has a specialty that doesn't actively shoot her in the foot, she's going in C tier. We have someone who specializes in mysticism from the Dungeon Tau, which means they're a good magic user. Not a lot to say. They're good, but in a boring way. So they're in B tier. We have Diargem. He's from the Cove town, and he's gonna be in C tier. I feel like I could put him in D tier just because you wouldn't be picking someone else from the Cove town if you picked him, but he specializes in the air shield, and I feel like it would just be unfair to rank him lower than C just because his competition is so stiff, unlike her. We have Darkstorm, who specializes in Stone Skin, and he's going to go ahead and be a solid B tier. Magic user from the Dungeon Town, very good. Also, Stone Skin is another spell that's cheap enough to use early game, useful early game, but also very useful late game. Yeah, so worth having. We have Deemer, who specializes in Meteor Storm, and he's also going to get B tier for just the sheer power of Meteor Storm, and building it up is obviously a good thing. We have this man, who I believe specializes in crew members. If he doesn't, feel free to correct me. I believe he's one of the special guys, though, so I can't actually look at him right now. But I believe he specializes in crew members, and with that being the case, crew members are utterly shit, so he's an F tier. If that's not what his specialty is, and I'm misremembering, I'll issue a preemptive apology. But we have Dessa, who specializes in logistics, and honestly, if she was a barbarian rather than a battle mage, I would put them in A tier, because being able to move around is so good, but being a mage in the fortress is just such a huge disadvantage. So I have a exception to my rule about no one who specializes in creatures being able to be above B tier in Dracon, who specializes in enchanters, because being able to turn, if you have enough resources, your entire stack of tier 4s into tier 6s is so monumentally huge. On top of that, his stats are really good, and he is a wizard, not an alchemist, despite focusing on a creature. We have Dracon, and Dracon I actually really like, but he specializes in gnolls and is, really simple. He's the gnoll king. You give him gnolls and they're stronger, and that's all there is to him. I don't know if I can articulate why I like him other than he is a cute doggy, but I think that's it. We have someone who specializes in griffins, and I want to give them D tier, but I'm going to give them C tier. Griffins are not a good tier 3, but they're better than I give them credit for in my head. Their main contribution is that they have endless retaliation, which means anytime you hit them, they hit you back. But the thing is, they're too fragile for that to go on long enough to matter. That being said, with their speed, they're able to cross huge distances and oftentimes go before many opponents, which make them still useful, even if they're not useful in the way that I want them to be useful. We have a druid who specializes in intelligence and is going to get a B tier. The reason why she's ranked higher than him, who also specializes in intelligence, is because she's from the Rampart town, which gets higher level mages guilds and can actually get Dimension Door or Town Portal, which are the spells you want with huge bars of mana. We have Elmore. He specializes in navigation and is getting an F tier. Navigation is a shit skill. But also from the Cove Town, we have Eovatius, the Navigator. And his specialty is the clone spell. Not only does he start with the 4th level spell clone, but it also creates 2 copies of his target rather than 1. This is huge, and he's getting an A tier. I saw that he was an S tier in the public list, but I don't think he is an S tier in my opinion. Clone is really good, but it's not like it can't be your only trick if you understand what I'm trying to say. It's not good enough to like completely rely on. We have an easy C tier here. He specializes in earth elementals. His name is Erdamon. We have an alchemist. They specialize in Nagas. I'm actually going to give them a B tier because his name is Fafnir, and Nagas are incredibly powerful even by the standards of tier 6s. So, like I said, it's not really worth picking someone who specializes in any monster, but if you were, Nagas are definitely not a bad decision. Next, we have Hellhounds. That's going to go ahead and be an F tier. Her name, if you're curious, is Fiona. She specializes in Hellhounds. Hellhounds are not good. We have Fjör. He specializes in fire elementals. Another easy C tier. I can't remember his name, but I do know he specializes in skeletons, and I do know that he is very good, and he is going to be in B tier. He is probably the only one who specializes in a tier 1 unit that I would consider B tier, and that's only because he's, a necromancer, and therefore will have enough tier 1s to make a difference. We have Galere. He's another one that gives you plus 350 gold. He's going to escape D tier only by virtue of the fact that he's in the Conflux and therefore the second best magic town, and he's a magic user. We also have Gelu, who's going to be the only other exception to my rule that specializing in a monster automatically means you can't be above B tier. He is going to be A tier, because being able to turn your tier 3 elves into tier 4 sharpshooters, as well as tier 2 crossbowmen into tier 4 sharpshooters, I don't think I need to explain why that's incredibly good. And the fact that he was an F tier on the public list still incenses me. More than it, rationally should. Here's Gem. She specializes in first aid. She's a magic hero from the Rampart faction, and she's getting a B tier on my list. Oh yes, we have Gion, who specializes in Eagle Eye, and he's gonna get a D tier. Eagle Eye is a terrible skill. I know that it can be enticing to be like, oh, I want to learn the spells that my opponents use, but it's just so easy to collect spells, especially battle spells. The only 2 spells I only ever have trouble finding are Dimension Door and Town Portal. And I think that's because me playing the HD edition and the Horn of the Abyss edition, they made them less likely to appear. Or something. But yeah, Eagle Eye's terrible. This man is from the Fortress Town. He specializes in Ballista. He's also not good. I feel like that's a easy enough statement to follow. Here is a weird one, in my opinion. Her name is Gerd, and she's from the Barbarian Town, but she specializes in sorcery, which I consider to be one of the best specializations, and I feel like I'm going to put her in B tier. But I could argue that she's C tier, just off the fact that she's from the Barbarian Town, who only gets up to the 3rd level spell guild, mage guild. We have a new one. Her name's Giselle. She specializes in interference, which lowers the power of enemy spellcasters. Which, since she's a ranger, which means she's a might hero, having weakened non-might heroes against her is a huge boon, in my opinion. I think she's an A tier. This is Gretchen. He specializes in goblins. He's gonna be a C tier. I wanna say goblins are shit, but they're really not that bad. Like, goblins themselves are shit. And I would put him in D tier if he was in any other town specializing in, like, the equally shit tier 1. But the town he's in and the fact that he's a might hero just makes him more viable than he should be, and so he basically gets the C tier on circumstance, like how certain mages have gotten higher tiers based on being from, like, the Tower faction, and so on. This is Grindan. He's gonna get a C tier. He has the exact same specialization as this man, whose name is Galere. Grindan and Galere are the same character. They just made it twice. I'm not sure why. But if you're curious as to why I ranked them how they did, just go back a couple minutes ago when I was talking about Galere. We have Gundala, and she's an A tier hero. And it's really, really weird. Her specialty is offense, like how Craghax is, and she's from the same town. However, Craghax is a barbarian, and Gundala is a battle mage. And being a battle mage means that her stats she gets, like, outside of her specialty, like her actual level up stats, are going to be based more on the power and knowledge skills. And since she's from the barbarian town, she's only going to be able to have access up to the 3rd level spells, which means she's not going to get as much out of it as she would need to be worth not getting the extra attack and defense to add on top of her attack. But that being said, she is such her offense is such a good skill anyway, and the fact that she also has magical options makes her an A tier almost based on her variety of being really good at 2 things, but not, like, the best at either of them. Still a really solid hero. In the dungeon, the mighty dungeon, we have Gunnar, who specializes in logistics and is gonna get a B tier. Logistics is great. I already explained why. I don't feel like I need to explain why he's not higher than B tier. B tier is already a really high tier. There are a lot of good heroes in Heroes, in my opinion. We have Gurnison, who's going to get a D tier. He specializes in the ballista. We have Halon, who's a wizard, and is going to also get a C tier. He specializes in mysticism, which is good. And the main reason he doesn't get a B tier is because I think he falls apart as not being as good of a choice as other, like, it's not worth picking him over the other heroes. We have Ignatus, who is a demonic, and he specializes in imps. Imps are trash. And so in the trash he goes. We have her, she specializes in fire elementals, also a C tier. We have, also her name is Ignicia. We have Ilor, he's a captain, he specializes in stormbirds. Stormbirds are tier 4s for the Cove Town. They are shit. He is getting a D tier. Not only does his specialization, is it wasted on a shit tier 4 unit, he also suffers from there being so many good choices from the Cove Town that it's just not, like, in no situation is it worth picking him. Yes, we have Ignum. He's a cleric. He specializes in monks. He's also getting a D tier. Monks might be the worst tier 5 in the game. And that's that about that. That's that about that. We have another Conflux boy. He is an elementalist who specializes in Bloodlust and is getting a C tier. I don't feel like Bloodlust is a comprehensive spell that really works that well for the Conflux units, other than maybe the Phoenix. But he's also still an elementalist in the Conflux, and being that allows a magic hero in the second best magic town allows him certain alleviations of his weaknesses, in my opinion. We have Iona, and she specializes in genies and is getting a C tier. Genies are good, not good enough to be worth, the hassle of picking her, but still good enough to not be worthless. And then we have Isra, and Isra is getting an S tier. Isra is a Death Knight. He specializes in necromancy. In addition to the fact that his stats are more based on his units being more powerful, and that his specialty is necromancy, which will mean he has many more units to increase his, he just gets too many units. He gets so many units, man. He gets so many Skelly boys, and even when he's not getting Skelly boys, he's getting liches. He's just so good. He's easily an S tier. We have Ivor. He specializes in elves. And he's a C tier. He used to be my favorite hero, and it saddens me that he's not that good, but he's a C tier, and honestly, I might have been willing to consider him a B tier because elves are so good, but I'm not going to because Gelu exists, and if you want to, make the most of those units, you don't pick the guy who specializes them, you pick the guy who turns them into sharpshooters. Also, I'd just like to take a second to explain why he is in B, is because other people get access to the unit that he makes, whereas these two are completely, it's only them who get to make those units. Anyway, sorry for that quick aside. I just felt like that was going to be a question at some point. I wanted to answer it preemptively. This is Jabarkis, and he specializes in orcs. Orcs are bad. Therefore, Jabarkis is bad? Question mark? D tier. We have Jaeger. He specializes in mysticism and is going to be getting a C tier along with Hallen. We have Jedite. He specializes in resurrection and is a mage from the dungeon town. He's getting an A tier. We have Genova. She specializes in gold. Plus 350 gold a turn. She's getting a D tier. We have the man himself, Jeremy. Specializes in cannon. All things being equal, he would be in D tier with these two specialize in ballista, but cannons are just so much more powerful that I'm gonna give him a C tier. I want to give him an S tier because I just like him that much. But he's, not. We have Josephine. She specializes in golems and is getting a C tier. We have Kate. She specializes in water elementals and is also getting a C tier. Then we have Kilgore, and he specializes in behemoths and is getting a B tier. I do genuinely forget this man's name. but I don't remember this man at all, actually. I think he specialized. No, I don't know this man. We're just gonna give him a benefit of the doubt C tier, I guess. And move on. I don't want to just save him to the end and be like, okay, I have to look this guy up now. However, Korvac specializes in serpent flies. Serpent flies are actually really good tier 3s, and so he's gonna get a B tier. Krillian specializes in ogres, getting put in D tier, where they belong. And I know this man specializes in logistics. His name is Kyre. And I look favorably upon those who have logistics, as you have probably deduced by now. And he is going to get a B tier? Solid B tier, in my opinion. We have Labitha with Stone Skin. She is also getting a B tier. Magic user from the Elementalist faction. Specializes in a thing that's good at the beginning and good at the end. Solid B tier. There's Lacus. She specializes in water elementals. Also getting a C tier. Here's Lena. She's plus 350 gold a turn. She's getting D tier like everyone else who does that. But then here's the Heart Wraith, who's getting a D tier. But then here's Lord Heart himself. Lord Heart is getting a tier. What makes him so different than all of the other gold-based heroes is that his is continuously growing in scale with every level, which makes him no longer just merely like a B tier, like a secondary hero that you would have to like bring you troops and also give you gold, but leveling him up is now incredibly beneficial to your treasury and winning the game economically incredibly valid. This is Lorelei. She specializes in harpies. She's getting a C tier. This is Loinus. He specializes in prayer and is getting a B tier. Prayer is solid throughout the game. Good magic user from the castle faction. Here's Luna. You all know Luna. She is an elementalist from the Conflux town, and she is getting an S tier. She specializes in firewall. Or not firewall. Yes, firewall. I was like, is it flame wall? We got another man named Malcolm, and he specializes in Eagle Eye. Eagle Eye is terrible. And like all other terrible heroes, he gets the F tier. We have Macalith here, and he's getting an A tier. He specializes in sorcery. Very good specialization. Here we have not so good a guy. Manfred specializes in fireball. Fireball is not good, and he is not good, and he's getting a D tier. To expand on that, fireball isn't necessarily the worst. It's just not it's not worth using your spell turn to cast fireball compared to other spells in almost any situation, and fire magic is already not ideal. Here's Marius, and she specializes in demons, and she's gonna get a C tier, mostly because she's just... The Inferno town doesn't have many other good physical people to specialize in, and her tier 4s are something special compared to the rest of the monsters in her town. But moving on, we have Melodia, who specializes in fortune and is getting a C tier. She's kind of a boring hero. But then we have Mafala, and she specializes in defense, and she is getting an S tier. She is the best Rampart hero, bar none. She specializes in defense, but has high enough stats to do other things as well, as far as her attack and also her being able to use spell points. She's crazy, she's great, she's incredibly solid, and she makes the most out of her town. In my opinion, easily an S tier. Oh, we have Marist. He specializes in stone skin, and he's actually going to get a B tier classification. Almost entirely based on just he is one of the best magic options for the fortress town because he specializes in a low-level spell that is incredibly useful both early and late game. There aren't many others. He only gets access up to third-level spells from his town, but that's kind of mitigated by the fact that he's specialized in a level 1 or 2 spell. I believe it's a level 1 spell. I know it's a level 1 spell, actually. Here's Miriam. She's a captain. She specializes in scouting. Scouting is not no. She's bottom tier. She is bottom tier trash. Not worth at all. I will admit that my understanding of how good these characters are from a frame of how do their abilities influence and help you in the final fight. Anyone whose abilities are exclusively to like help them rush things faster, I only see as good in the context that they help you get things faster that could potentially help later. But anyone whose specialization, which is incredibly powerful, runs out of usefulness early before the halfway point of the game, is just not worth it, in my opinion. And I feel like that might be a big difference, because I see scouting as an almost completely worthless skill. Because I'm eventually going to scout out the entire map every time, and usually well before the game's over, I will be able to see everything. So being able to see things faster helps with like, oh, okay, I spawn next to someone, there's an artifact there, I saw it first, I'm going to go grab it. It's just not worth wasting an incredibly powerful weapon for, which are what most of the specializations are. Anyway, we have someone who specializes in weakness and is going to get an F tier. Just not weakness, low tier spell. She's from the fortress town, and therefore you probably don't want like a magic user anyway when you're picking her town. We have Moandar, and he is going to be a B tier. He is a Death Knight who specializes in liches. Specializing in liches is particularly good, kind of in the same way that specializing in skeletons is really good, because if you're able to get a Cloak of the Undead King, then you're able to have a ton of them, and then you're powering up the thing you have a ton of. And if you're not, they're already powerful tier 5 shooters, which powering up your only shooters in your army, good regardless. So it's good. I would say if you could guarantee that you were getting a Cloak of the Undead King, that he would be S tier. Because while you have a Cloak of the Undead King, he is easily S tier. But because that's far from a certainty, especially on shorter maps, I put him on B tier because I feel like that's what he is without the artifact. We have Maureen. He specializes in psychic elementals and is getting a C tier. And then we have Dragon Form of Qatar, I believe is her name. These are the same person. This is her dragon form. They have the same specialization. we are going to put her in high B tier, and we're going to put her in low B tier. The only reason she's higher B tier is her stats are stronger because she's a motherfucking dragon. In fact, her stats are so much stronger that I might put her in A tier, but her specialization doesn't really hold up. We have Nagash, and he specializes in plus 250 gold and is going to get put in D tier like the rest of them. Then we have Neela. Neela is high A tier. I want to put her in S tier, but I just barely can. She specializes in defense, which is incredible because it allows her units to stay alive longer while she casts her various spells. Additionally, specializing in either defense or offense is such a massive boon to your army that it almost guarantees an A rank. The reason why I can't give her an S rank is because she's a might hero in the wizard town. And it's really hard for me to say that she is S tier, which would be to be the best choice, or tied for the best choice, in a town when she doesn't take full use of its most powerful aspects. I probably use her more often than I use Syra, even though I think Syra is better. I enjoy using Neela better. It's hard for me not to put her in S tier. But then we have Nimbus, who is an easy F tier with her eagle eyes. I bet she saw that coming. We have Nimbus, who specializes in pit fiends, and I'll be nice and give her B tier. We have Octavia, who specializes in plus 350 gold and is getting D tier like the rest of them. We have Olema, who specializes in weakness and is getting F tier. We have Oris, who's a battle mage with eagle eyes and is getting easily F tier, despite her being one of my favorite looking heroes. And then we have Orin, who specializes in archery and is actually going to go ahead and get B tier. It's not as good as if he was just focusing on offense, but being able to increase the damage of all of your archers and having the fact that his town is one of the ones who have 2 shooters, it's really solid. We have another one. His name is Pathis. He's specializing in specializing in psychic elementals. I'm sorry, he is a planeswalker. And anyway, he's getting a C tier. We have a Piquardram. Can't say his name. I'm sorry, but here is what he looks like. Anyway, he specializes in gargoyles and is getting a D tier. Yes, Pyre, specializing in Ballista. I almost want to give her C tier because of how shit most of the Inferno units are, having a hero who has high stats, but isn't specializing in one of their units, but instead specializing in the Ballista to, give her an extra bit, to overcome the weaknesses of her chosen town. I almost want to give her a C tier, but I have to give her a D tier. Because while I think she's good for her town, the fact that she's in her town makes her weaker. Also, Ranlu is getting a D tier. Honestly, I might give her... Ranlu specializes in the Ballista. I'll give him D tier. I could have been convinced to give him F tier, just because he has to compete with so many powerful heroes in the Necropolis. Anyway, we have Rakshka, and he specializes in Efreet. And I'm going to go ahead and give him a C tier. Efreet are great. They are one of 2 units based on their tier that are actually really good in the Inferno town, them and the demons. We have Rion. He specializes in first aid. He'll go ahead and get a D class. He's from the castle town, in case you were unaware. We have Rissa. She gets +1 Mercury a day. She's going to go ahead and be an F tier. We have Roland. He's going to go ahead and be a B tier. He specializes in swordsman. We have Rosik, the witch, who specializes in mysticism. She's going to be D tier. She could be C tier, but she's brought down to D tier because she's trying to... Her abilities do not mesh well with the abilities that her... Like, the advantages her town give her. This is Sandro. Sandro specializes in sorcery and is an S tier hero. Sandro is an S tier hero. They had Sandro in F tier, or D tier, or whatever, and anyone who doesn't... Sandro should 99% of the time just be your default pick for Necropolis. He is so incredibly good, and so specifically takes advantage of the advantages and disadvantages given to the Necropolis town that he can't not be an S tier. I almost gave him an A tier because I do think that I prefer the two who specialize in necromancy, but honestly, I feel like Sandro's the better, more solid, rounded hero. We have Ryland, who specializes in dendroids. Dendroids are shit. However, he does start with... dendroids aren't shit. They're very slow, but they do have their uses. They're a tier 5 unit. Ryland also starts with diplomacy, so between his specialty and starting with diplomacy, I have to give him a B tier. Like, I think you can definitely make something happen out of Ryland, but I don't think that he is the most solid choice. We have Sonya. Sonya is a cleric. She has eagle eye. She's terrible. She's an F tier. There's almost no factors that can make someone who has eagle eye as their specialization good. And we also have Sarug, who has +1 gems a day. She's also an F tier. And we have Sephiroth. Almost named Sephiroth. Almost want to give her a +1 tier for that, but I can't. She's +1 crystal a day and is an F tier. This is Septiana. She specializes in Death Ripple and is going to go ahead and get a C tier. Death Ripple doesn't do enough damage for me to classify her as a B tier, but still it's a solid specialization, especially compared to some of the others on this list. Here is Serena. She has Eagle Eye, though I will give her a D tier instead of an F tier, exclusively because she's a magic user in the best magic using castle, which means her utility is almost automatically higher than certain other heroes, and though it's still a worthless specialization, she is probably the one who can theoretically make the most of it. Here's Shakti. He specializes in troglodytes. Troglodytes are tier 1s, and I'll give him a D tier. This is Shiva. She specializes in rocks, which are the tier 5s for the Barbarian Castle, and I'll give her a C tier because... No, I'll give her a B tier, actually, because she's a Barbarian from the Barbarian Town, which is already, pretty solid, but more notably... their tier 5s are among the best. This is Sir Molich. He gives +2 speed to all of his... +2 speed to all of his units. He is an A tier hero. He is speed. This is Solomir. Solomir is a B tier hero. He specializes in chain lightning, which, on top of not on top of being pretty powerful, has the downsides of A, it can harm your own people, and B, it is incredibly expensive, and also 3, C, there are so many ways to like take minimized or less damage from lightning spells anyway that it doesn't seem to be on the same tier as Meteor Swarm in my opinion. I don't understand how he was ranked as S tier on the big map. And I don't know if I'm being completely objective, because I might be able to be convinced to put him in A tier, and I might be putting him in B tier out of just disgust that he was somehow in S tier, because like I see him as borderline B and A tier. But I'm more comfortable putting him in B tier than I think I would be if I was being biased. This is Sorsha. She specializes in the swordsman and is also getting a B tier. This is Spint. He's a navigator. He specializes in sorcery and is getting an A tier. Sorcery and offense are they're basically two sides of the same coin. I'd argue that offense is definitely better, don't get me wrong, I'm not crazy. I think sorcery is so good, especially late game, when you have incredibly powerful damaging spells. Just that extra oomph behind your implosion. So good. This is Straker. He specializes in zombies. Zombies are, well, simply put, terrible. He's getting a D tier. I almost put him in F tier, but that's not fair considering some of the other people we have in F tier. This is Stig. They specialize in sorcery, and they're getting a B tier. The reason they're not getting an A tier, despite specializing in sorcery, which I've already explained is very good, is because, well, they're from the town that only gets up to level 3 Mages Guild. This is Sevelia. She specializes in navigation. Navigation is a worthless skill. I'm not taking any more questions regarding navigation at this time, thanks. This is Sinka. She specializes in manticores and is getting a C tier spot. This is Tamika. She specializes in Black Knights and is getting a B tier slot. I would also like to revise Darth Harkin's Lord Hart's position to B tier, because he also specializes in Death Knights and is quite strong. I don't know what I was thinking when I put him in D tier, honestly. Here is a man whose name I don't know, because I'm not as familiar with the Horn of the Abyss expansion. However, I do know his specialty are Nyx Warriors, and Nyx Warriors are solid tier 6s, and so he can be put in B tier pretty comfortably. This is Tizar. Tizar specializes in defense and gets so much defense to a disgusting degree, as a matter of fact, and he is an S tier hero. Him and Craghack are often seen as two sides of the same coin, and I really do agree with that understanding of them. I need a second because I don't remember this guy off the top of my head. I'm looking for him right now. Hello? 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 Whomst are you, my good sir? Oh, found him. Oh, he's Tarek the Battle Mage. He specializes in haste and is getting a B tier rating. He's gonna get he is yeah, no, he's real good. You know what? I'm gonna give him an A tier rating. Haste is a low-level spell that costs almost no mana, so the fact that he's from the barbarian town isn't really a detriment, and being able to make his units faster, especially with their rush down murder things tactic, and like their tier 7 behemoths just want to tank everything, but still getting them there faster is optimal. It's just a really good specialization for his town, even though he is shot out of S tier because he's, well, a mage, very similar to her. They would be better if they were not mages and still somehow retained their specializations. We have Thane. He's an alchemist. He specializes in genies, and he's getting a C tier. Genies are okay. Being an alchemist is not so much. We have Thant, the Necromancer, who is an A tier. He specializes in animate dead, which is huge. We have Theodorus. He specializes in mages and is going to go ahead and get himself a C tier. I'm a little lost on where this guy is from again. Because I thought I knew where he was from, and then I looked at, I'm like, where I thought he was from, and then he's just not from there. No, he's from the Rampart, right? And he specializes in resistance. I believe he's from the Rampart and specializes in resistance, and is getting a C tier under those assumptions. If he isn't from the Rampart and doesn't specialize in resistance, then his tier may be subject to change. Also, this is a guy who specializes in earth elementals. Pretty obvious, because he looks like a goddamn earth elemental. And, oh, this is Tiva. She specializes in Eagle Eye, and is getting an F tier. Actually, she's getting a D tier. And let me explain my reasoning on that. She specializes in Eagle Eye in a town where they don't have access to spells, which actually kind of makes it not a completely worthless skill to have. So she does have the chance to steal spells from more qualified spellcasters, and that, in my opinion, makes her more worthwhile than others who specialize in Eagle Eye. But this man specializes in Ballista and is getting a D tier. Also, he's a might hero in the Tower faction, which I've already explained is a detriment in and of itself. Here's... Nope, that's not Gurnison. This is Tyraxor, the barbarian who specializes in wolf riders, and he is getting himself a C tier. This is Tyrus, the knight who specializes in cavaliers, and she is getting herself a B tier. Specializes in cavaliers, not knights. Anyway, Uthrent, this ranger specializes in dwarves. He's an F tier. dwarves are so unbelievably slow and not, though they're defensively solid, they're not strong enough to make a difference. They're just not good. And specializing in dwarves when you're better off leaving your dwarves at home 90% of the time because they slow down your movement so much is just such a dumb idea. But we also have Uland the druid who specializes in cure and gets himself a B tier slot. Magic user, solid. From Rampart, solid. Specializes in cure spell, good at low and high levels. I feel like that hits all my qualifications as a B tier hero pretty easily. But then we have Valeska, who specializes in archers and is going to get herself put in C tier because archers are not that spectacular, but they're not a detriment in any way. Like, it's unlike the person who specializes in dwarves, you are not going to be better served leaving your archers at home more often than not, and therefore having them powered up isn't a detriment in any way. It's just not worth picking, not one of the better heroes. We have Verdish, who specializes in first aid, and because of how specifically her town has such tanky monsters, she's going to go ahead and be in B tier, because keeping alive her tanky monsters, except it is notable that the least tanky tier 7 is the tier 7 from her castle, but she has other tanky monsters that are worth keeping alive, most notably the Gorgons, and I'm going to give her a B tier. That's just a really solid hero to play. We have... Is this not Gretchen? This is not Gretchen. Who the Oh, you're the battle mage, aren't you? Yeah, she's gonna go ahead and get a D tier, just basically based on being a battle mage with a lackluster specialization. But then we have Vidomina, and she is another S tier hero. She is a necromancer who specializes in necromancy. And yeah, she's also S tier. Get out a huge army, plus she's a spellcaster, so she uses the huge army as meat shields while she blows everybody up. Her army isn't as strong as Isra's, and her magic isn't as strong as Sandro's, but she's a solid middle ground between both of them, and just a really deadly combination of a hero. This is Vokiel. He specializes in vampires and is getting B tier almost entirely based on how good vampire lords are. I almost want to give him A tier, because making vampires stronger is stupid. They're already so good, especially if you're able to knock down threats that could kill them in one shot. They're usually able to keep themselves alive through battles permanently. We have Voy, who specializes in navigation. Don't even know why they decided to show up. They can navigate themselves to the F tier. We have Wiston, who specializes in lizardmen, and I'll give a C tier because lizardmen are actually not terrible. They are the only shooters, so having slightly more powerful shooters in that town that specializes in speed or tanking things is it's just like a little nice bonus, though I wouldn't say it was worth sacrificing a better specialization. I believe this next man specializes in Fireball, and he does, and he's going to go ahead and get a D tier, because specializing in Fireball is not a boon. At all. I'll put him next to the other guy who specializes in Fireball. These two are shit. Don't be them. We have Zeron. He specializes in Devils, and he is going to get a B tier. Powering up Devils, pretty solid. They're not the best tier 7s, but they're still incredibly deadly, and they don't need a permanent buff. that this hero provides to be deadly foes. So, definitely worth it. I for sure can't pronounce this person's name. It's XSI. I'm going to say Zai as their name. Anyway, they specialize in stone skin, and I'm going to go ahead and give them a B tier ranking. And we are in the final stretch now, lads. We have Zeron, who specializes in Inferno, which is basically just bigger Fireball. Unfortunately, it isn't that much. I'm still only giving him a C tier. Honestly, Inferno is not all that. Fire magic is pretty lame overall. This is Yogg. Yogg is a B tier hero. Yogg specializes in Cyclops, which is good. She also has a really cool backstory that isn't necessarily factoring into her power rating on this scale, as this is about usefulness, not coolness, because if it was about coolness, I promise you, it'd be a very different list. But, yeah. She specializes in Cyclops, is a solid, powerful hero, worth using. Zelaire specializes in Forgetfulness and is also going to get a B tier rating because Forgetfulness is a great early and late game spell for combating shooters, which when you have certain slow members of your team can make all the difference. We have Zubin, the Battle Mage, and he specializes in precision, and I'm going to go ahead and give him the B tier rating. I'm going to give him a pass from the fact that he is a Battle Mage in the Barbarian town, because precision is such a good low-level spell. It's kind of good in the same way that haste is good, that it starts useful and gets more useful as you go on. But I would say it's still less useful than haste, especially since they only have one shooter in the orcs. Actually, they have two shooters. They have the orcs and the cyclopses. Please forgive me. But even then, I can't say that gives him an A tier rating, but he's definitely above average. We have Zydar, the Heretic, specializes in sorcery and is, in my opinion, an A-tier hero, perhaps the only A-tier hero in the Inferno Castle. Which makes sense to me, because he is, in my opinion, the correct hero to play if you're going to play Inferno. And then lastly, we have Axis, who specializes in mysticism and is going to get himself a solid C tier. And yeah, this is my Heroes of Might and Magic 3, including the Horn of the Abyss roster, Heroes tier list. Thank you all for watching, and I know this video probably went pretty long, but for those of you who stuck in there, thanks. I'll save this and try and put it in the links below in the description. Let me know what you think of my tier list, because I know some of the things I picked are going to be divisive. But I do generally feel pretty comfortable with this tier list, with the exception of the two people that I didn't recognize or know for sure who I was. These two, I'm very easily swayed on either of these two because I wasn't able to find their information, and I haven't used them to a high degree in the past. But I feel comfortable saying they're pretty important. Resistance and whatever he does, probably not worth it. In before his specialties like sorcery, defense, or offense or something. But yeah. Thanks for watching.